Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love what you see here, everything is for sale. We have SKUs, names, references, and prices in the description below, but reach out to me, Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com with any of your purchase and pricing questions. Also, we're in the home stretch to the holidays. We're looking to build inventory. We love to sell watches, but we also love to trade and buy. We pay cash, we pay fast, we make the process effortless. Finance your holiday presents or even just your next watch by trading or selling your current watch or watches to us. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing details. Today, we're starting off with an extraordinary Rolex Daytona. It's not because this is the 116509 in white gold. We've seen that before. It's because this is the Grossular dial. So I'll do my best to show you this in the light because that's really the only place you're going to get the full benefit. It is a ruby red neosilicate that is essentially like a red version of sodalite. So if you're familiar with sodalite, that's exactly what this is, almost with the color of heart of ruby. You could see there's that textured profile across the top of the neosilicate material. It's not glass smooth like lacquer. This is a natural material. You can also see there are impurities, like little freckles in the dial, ensuring that no two are ever going to be exactly alike. Now, this is a 40 millimeter white gold Daytona with a Z serial number. So this is a late Z, so it's approximately 2006. Easy to wear. It's got a gem set dial, but it's a gem set dial, not a gem set case or bezel. That's actually how I prefer my gems on my watches, on the dial if they're going to be there. And of course, most of the sodalites and these Grossular dials do include gems. We'll zoom out a little bit, take a look at this watch on my wrist, and as you can see, it's a great fit. It's only 12.1 millimeters thick, full bracelet, 100 meters water resistant, loomed, 3-day power reserve, vertical clutch, column wheel chronometer, anti-magnetic, robustly shock resistant, and these Grossular gem set dials are super rare, to the point that this is now my first in 8 years and 7,000 videos of watch reviews. But let's say you want something that is even a little bit more exclusive than that. Well, how about a watch that is built only a few hundred copies a year over all varieties from a manufacturer that makes 100,000 watches per year? Well, at jaeger-lecoultre, they do make 100 grand per year as of 2022, but they only make a few hundred Duomet, and only a few of those are going to be rose gold Duomet à quantième lunaire. Now, this watch is 42 millimeters in diameter in rose gold. It has the domed bezel that arrived for 2012, giving the watch a softer look. Granular dials were big at JLC during the 2010s, and this is one of their best. You could see the dial side of caliber 381 is handsomely finished. One is the power reserve for the regulator. The other is the power reserve for the time, the date, and the moon phase. We have a pointer style date and a moon phase. We have two power reserves, manually wound, both 50 hours. We have a foudroyant, or 1/6 of a second hand. Now you pull the crown to its first stop, and the foudroyant stops at the index. Then you pull the crown out the second step, and a hammer falls on a heart cam that zero resets and aligns both of these. But take a look at that. The balance is still beating. That's because normal hacking second will stop the balance so you can set the watch, but in the process, it forces the balance to spend time getting back up to its amplitude, which means restarting the watch, you're going to lose time inherently. Well, this watch is dedicated entirely to chronometry, so not only do we have a hacking and zero reset to 1/6 of a second, not only do we have one barrel that does nothing but power the escapement, but we never actually stop the balance when we hack the watch. So let's talk about those two barrels. You wind them both with one crown. They're made of steel, which is why they're silver compared to the German silver of the rest of the movement. German silver, or Maillot, as they would call it in the French-speaking regions of the Jura, where these movements are made at JLC. JLC is in the Jura Mountains. It's in the Vallée du Jeu, in between the mountains. And so we have this golden hued material contrasting with the steel components. There's a Côte de Soleil, or sunburst, that radiates out, and note we have both black polished and fired blued screws. It actually looks a lot like a Longa, and it is a very special watch because we have one barrel to power the complication and the time, and one barrel that does nothing but maintain barrel amplitude. This is said to be the most accurate mechanical watch that JLC makes, and it has a full deployant clasp. We'll show it on the wrist one more time. It's a great fit. I owned the 42 millimeter Duomet case size. I had the white gold chronograph. I loved that watch. That was an incredibly accurate watch. This watch is more so. JLC, though, makes some monsters, but they always make the size a purposeful kind of size. And in 2007, they launched this, the Master Compressor Diving Pro Geographic, 46.3 millimeters in grade 5 titanium. It has a fully mechanical depth gauge. This is borrowed from IWC's Deep 123 series, so it's not the battery-powered system that Panerai uses. We've got a chunky 60-click diving bezel. We've got a secondary time zone in 24-hour format. We've got a geographic complication that allows you to adjust your reference city down at 6 o'clock to coordinate with that second time zone. And then we have plenty of luminescence in the dark. Look at the size of that bezel pearl. The watch is 300 meters water resistant, but the depth gauge, which is suitable for maximum depth that amateurs typically reach, it reads up to 80. Inside, we have JLC's most modern and durable caliber, the 729. It's based on the 975 Auto Tractor, so 48-hour automatic winding power reserve, a hairspring double welded at the stud and the collet. The hairspring is made by Longa for JLC. The free sprung balance is super tough and also equipped for precise regulation. And this is a JLC movement, finished like a JLC, but built like a Rolex for toughness. Now, the watch is big, but surprisingly, you can wear it. All in titanium, it's very light on the wrist. It's going to look big, that's the look, but I suggest that you consider it like a big pilot's watch for subsurface aviators. You're flying with flippers. This is the watch for you as a backup to your electric diving computer. Now, of course, we have a bracelet that is actually rubber sheathed titanium. All the links are removable, and we actually have little micro adjustments, easy link style, 2.5 millimeters fold out, fold in, tool free on each side for 5 millimeters of total adjustability. It is a very cool watch. You can see the mechanism that underpins the diving gauge. And the diving depth gauge is just an absolute pleasure to play with. The ultimate thrill for your friends. This is the ultimate show-off watch. Forget your tourbillon, forget your minute repeater. Everyone can understand why that is cool. So Grand Seiko makes a lot of special editions, but this one combines the best of East and West. This is the Grand Seiko Watches of Switzerland Toge SBGM 241. So it's part of the Elegance collection. We'll get a little bit closer. You can see that it's a 39 millimeter Zaratsu polished case. That's a manual tin plate polishing method that's used on the case. And we have a unique strap here with British racing green contrasting stitch, and then a wonderfully buttery soft alligator and calfskin on the bottom. You can see it's a brand new Grand Seiko strap. The dial features the Mount Iwate scatter pattern, almost like the snow on the peak of Iwate, which is close to Morioka, where the mechanical Grand Seiko watches are made. But this one is in British racing green. So Toge means mountain pass. And this model, which came out in 2020, is designed to evoke summertime driving in and around Mount Iwate, presumably with some sort of British racing green sports car, maybe Japanese, maybe British, but Watches of Switzerland is British in origin. So we have the Iwate dial, evoking not so much the snow-peaked cap, though the pattern is there, it's subtle, but the verdure of summer and driving a mountain pass in a sports car during those days. The movement is automatic winding entirely in-house down to the shock protection and the lubricants used. It gives you 2 time zones and a 72-hour power reserve. And the watch is under 47 millimeters from lug to lug, so it wears nicely on a smaller wrist. This is really ideally sized. It's great for him, it's great for her. The dial is largely handmade, hand-finished. The indices and dial furniture are hand-placed, and the case is hand-finished too. You will not find the like on a comparably priced Swiss watch. Speaking of bargains from smaller brands outside of Switzerland, Nomos Glasuta is one of them. This is the Metro Neomatic, so it's 38.5 millimeters in steel. It's only 8.6 millimeters thick. You know you're dealing with the Metro when you have a monoblock case with no visibly separate bezel seam, and then these wire-style looped lugs. Now this is the Midnight Blue dial. You can see it does have a hacking seconds function. It's printed in silver, so there's a more subtle contrast between the silver and the Midnight Blue matte dial than you would have if it were white printed. We have that signal orange seconds hand and the sub-seconds. Then we have a hybrid baton needle style set of hour and minute hands. On the reverse side, a movement that is all Nomos, Deutsche Uhrenwerke 3001. When it's a Greek letter on Anomo's movement, that's in-house, but it's not their own assortment. When it's Deutsche Uhrenwerke, it is their own balance, hairspring, and escapement. They call it the swing system. It's functionally identical to what you would get, for example, from the Swatch Group, but critically, it's made in-house at Nomos in Glasuta. Automatic winder, 43-hour power reserve, and the watch is beautiful on the wrist. It's really a great unisex option. It's sporty, although it could also pass muster as a dress watch, and it features a lovely shell cordovan Horween strap. So it is Horween leather, shell cordovan, poreless, hairless, seamless. It's actually horse leather and has a remarkably upscale look, much like the Fagliano straps made by Casa Fagliano for jaeger-lecoultre. Patek Philippe makes beautiful things, and every once in a while, it will make a dress watch on a beautiful bracelet. Not super common, but they're out there. This is a 5146 1G in white gold with bracelet. It's the -010. It's a very early example because it has a caliber 315. Those were phased out starting in 2006. The model itself launched in 2005. So nice and wearable at 39 millimeters. It's slim enough to fit underneath the cuff with a nice domed bezel, a ruthenium metallic sunburst dial. It's actually quite well loomed. The bracelet is a handsome piece, and because this is a pre-2012 Patek bracelet, removable links are fixed by screws, not pin sleeves. It's an annual calendar with a moon phase and a power reserve. So we'll take a quick look. You can see it is quite well loomed, no shortage there. And the annual calendar is Patek's original innovation. It debuted on the 5035 in 1996. So we have the day, the month, we have a moon phase, and we have a date. And it only needs to be corrected once or annually during the jump from February to March. Automatic winding watch. It has a power reserve indicator up at the top. And on the reverse side, I'll do my best to show you this. You can see the movement is handsomely executed with Poinçon de Genève. That would have gone away mid-2009, so you get a good sense of when this watch was made. It is the caliber 315 that really marks it as a very early foundational 5146, and they're uncommon to find on full factory bracelets. Of course, this is gray gold, which is an 18-karat white alloy that's white all the way through and never needs ruthenium plating. This is the good stuff that you find on JLC, Grubel 4C, Rolex, Patek Philippe. And again, this is Patek's emblematic complication. You get a moon phase, the annual calendar, and a power reserve all in one. We don't talk about a lot of Bulgari watches from before the era of the Octo Finissimo, but we probably should, because for a long time, Bulgari, like Cartier, was known for designs that were then equipped with the best movement available. So they were not necessarily a manufacturer, and they made no pretense about being a manufacturer, but they wanted to have the highest quality product when the design, the case, the dial, and the movement came together. So this is a 500-piece steel limited edition from the 2013 model year. This is the Diagonal Chronograph limited edition. It uses some design language from Gerald Genta's 1970s Bulgari, which is why we have the logo twice on the dial. The dial's polished. The majority of the case is satin. It uses hinge-style lugs. And then it's surprisingly only about 12.3 millimeters thick. Screw-down crown, 100 meters water-resistant. It is a sports watch. It is swimmable, and it's quite well loomed. The dial is what's known as champ-levé. So the little sectors for the center, those were actually etched out, and then the edge to create the primarily blue base, that was also hollowed out, and lacquer was applied in alternating coats of blue and white and clear, and polished by hand in up to 12 applications, which were then polished to be flush with the metallic elements. And remember, these are all little wells that have been carved out and then filled with the lacquer to make them flush. A very artisanal craft technique that results in a beautiful silver, white, and blue glossy dial base. And all of this had to be cured at high temperature before the next step could be undertaken. Now, Bulgari calls this caliber 303. I call it a Frédéric Piguet 1185, and it is a high horology movement, and it has been since it was created for Blancpain back in the 1980s. Today, Frédéric Piguet is manufactured Blancpain. They don't make movements for other brands as often as they used to, but the old movements remain gorgeous in their many high horology applications. So you can see here that the anglage is a particular highlight, but we also have Côte de Genève, engine turning, satination on wheels, black polishing on the column wheel and the screw heads. It's integrated and automatic with a 40-hour power reserve, and the combination of the column wheel and the smooth, seamless vertical clutch mechanism. Now the watch is big, at about 52 millimeters lug to lug. It's no shrinking violet, but it's also thin. And you can see because of the specific shape of the lugs, they're hinges rather than horns. It wears better on a smaller wrist. I still think your wrist should be my size, 16 centimeters circumference or larger, but it does have a very striking appearance, and exclusivity is guaranteed, as these pre-octo finissimo Bulgaris are quite rare in the United States. Here's a crowd pleaser and a personal favorite of mine. This is the IWC Pilot's Watch Chronograph Mercedes-Benz AMG Petronas Formula One Team Edition. So this watch was launched on the occasion of the inaugural F1 Grand Prix of Miami this year, and it's unusual in that it uses the Petronas team sponsor color of teal, case made of media blasted titanium. It is the only 41 millimeter IWC Pilot's Watch Chronograph that has a media blasted titanium case. The strap uses IWC's new quick release system, and the quick release critically it's built into the actual strap. So there's a push button release. It's not like one of those quick release systems that locks you into a proprietary strap design. So it's not like the older systems seen on the IWC Aquatimers or the Cartier Roadsters or the Hublot Big Bang Unicos. You can use any 20 millimeter strap here. You just have that quick release built into the factory strap, and the watch comes with two. There's this vulcanized rubber teal strap, and then there is a textile and leather strap that has a contrasting steel stitch, and it's very easy to replace. Also, IWC Pilot's watches are becoming more water resistant. It seems this started with the big Pilot's Watch 43, but now this watch is 100 meters water resistant rather than their old standard of 60. You got a screw down crown, 100 meters of water resistance, quick set date, double quick set in fact. You've got hacking seconds, and you've got a new movement. Now you can see this is a very easy system to take apart. It's also a super easy system to reattach because it snaps right back on. The movement is the 69385, which is a drop-in replacement for the old Valjoux 7750. It's the same size, but it's superior in function. It has a little bit more power reserve at 46 rather than 44, and it includes critically a column wheel function selector, so you get crisp feel. It still uses the oscillating pinion, which is a compact minimal play lateral clutch system used on the old 7750 that usually gave the 7750 less seconds hand jump than any conventional lateral clutch. Today the only companies using oscillating pinions are those with 7750 architectures, F.P. Journe's Chronograph Monopoussoir Rattrapant, and of course those with oscillating pinion systems like this based on the Valfleurier caliber underpinning the 69385. So this is a very fine chronograph that wears nicely on my wrist, and I actually think this is super cool because of the fit, the feel, the lightness, and the color. Even if you're not a Mercedes fan or an F1 fan, this is a very attractive watch, and if you're not into the Petronas angle, just tell yourself it's Miami blue. A very special piece. I love this watch. Okay, what do you think this is? Let's take a quick look. Now you might have an idea, but did you guess? Launched in 2014, this was, at the time, the thinnest mechanical watch in production. It's the Piaget Alta Plano 900P, 38 millimeters in rose gold. I measured it at only 3.7 millimeters thick, and it's 41.8 millimeters lug to lug. It is astounding. Taking a look at the dial, which is one and the same as the movement, you have a hanging barrel. It hangs only from one side of the bridge to thin out the watch. Skeletonized bridges allow you to see the combination of the barrel, the great wheel, third wheel, fourth wheel, and escape wheel. There's a beautifully decorated bridge for the anchor, a Piaget-shaped fine adjustment mechanism. And if you look carefully, you can see that all these wheels, plus the hands, are actually recessed below the plane of their bridges. So if the watch is strapped tightly on the wrist or compressed by water, the crystal, which is about 1/5 of a millimeter thick, will not come in contact with the wheels or the hands. The case back is solid gold, but it's also one and the same as the movement, as the case back is also the base plate. And you can see that the case back has been shrink wrapped around the stem tube assembly. This movement is extraordinary in every regard, including power reserve, which somehow is a real world 48, I would have guessed 24, 25, 26, a barely adequate number. No, it's a manual wind, 48-hour power reserve, and it makes no excuse. The fact that this watch is also 20 meters water resistant is also extraordinary and a real shock for those familiar with this type of watch. Taking a quick look, it disappears. Suitable for him, suitable for her, and released to mark 140 years of Piaget. This is named after the original 9P caliber of 1957, which was 2 millimeters thick. It was Piaget's first in-house ultra-thin caliber. This is the 900P, launched for 2014, and still a breathtaking sight. I talked about Patek making nice things, and they've always made nice things. In 1992, they launched this, the reference 5000. It's a handsome off-center three-hand with a 33.5 millimeter case in yellow gold. You could see this was before Patek was making its own cases, as it has a key of Geneva with a guild number on it rather than the Patek Philippe maker's mark. You can also see the era when the watch was made. It's got a early 1995, or at least first half 1995 hallmark under the lug. And you know the model came out in 1992, so you know this was made between 1992 and 1995. It was always an unusual watch in its use of a 240 micro rotor, as Patek generally used center rotor automatics or manual wind calibers in simple Calatravas. Typically, the micro rotor was reserved for complications. So this is unusual as an application in a three-hand watch, but it has all the advantage of the micro rotor. A display vista almost like a manual wind with no winding rotor or winding bridge to block your view, and a thin profile like a manual wind, but with the convenience of an automatic. You could see the old school Swiss Sigma dial to signify that the hands and the numerals are made of gold. The bezel is shallow and domed, and it's the lugs as well as the off-center seconds that give this series its distinctive appearance. So on the wrist, even though it's 33 and a half, it wears like a much larger watch. Without my calipers, I would have guessed 36, maybe 37, and so this is the watch for those who have a taste in smaller, vintage, and more traditional sizes. And I've always said of yellow gold, it works best in small doses and vintage packages, and at this point, the reference 5000J qualifies as both. You can see automatic winding, Geneva hallmark, 48-hour power reserve, micro rotor automatic. This is both vintage and compact. Beautiful, good manners. If you're going to use yellow gold, use it in a package like this. I always felt like Ulysse Nardin would be a great collection theme, and I feel like I'm also drawn to the lodestone rock. Like eventually I will put together a collection of an El Toro, a Freak, a Sonata Silicium, an Aqua Perpetual, and I don't know where I'm going to stop, but UN is probably my next great collection theme, and it's because of watches like this. From 2012 in rose gold, this is the 99-piece Ulysse Nardin Blue Toro. It's part of the El Toro GMT plus minus perpetual family that debuted in 2010. So it's 43 millimeters in rose gold, but it has ceramic capped GMT pushers for jumping your local time zone. It has a ceramic capped bezel that's also a 24-hour scale for that secondary time zone, which I will show you now. You can see there's a secondary hand. We have the El Toro bridge. You can see it's a bridge for the day, the month, and the double-digit year of the perpetual calendar. We have a double-digit date up at the top. It's the Ludwig Oxlin perpetual calendar, so it can be set forward and backwards. I can do all the jumping of the calendar, and I can't accidentally damage it by setting at the wrong time of day. We have dial side screws, satination, beveling, and Côte de Genève. And while it's easy to see why the watch is called El Toro, it has this bullhead-like bridge. You might not have noticed that the numeral 12 at the top is deliberately styled to also look like the letter R, a tribute to Ulysse Nardin savior and former owner Rolf Schneider. I learned that one from Patrick Hoffman. I didn't figure that out myself. So you've got a plus-minus system, a second time zone, a big date, bidirectional settable perpetual calendar, and it is a COSC certified Swiss chronometer that's well loomed and 100 meters water resistant. Let's take a look at that loom. There's absolutely no shortage. This is a true sports watch. When you flip it over, you can also see that there is a sort of a nickel anthracite coating on the movement. And we have a UN caliber 32 that's basically a distant relative of a Lamagna automatic, but made in-house. You can see the magic lever bidirectional Paul-based winding system there. It's an auto winder with handsome finishing and some unusual elements like circular Côte de Genève and a etched and recessed rusticated profile on a rotor in white gold that also includes a lacquered insert. Chronometer, 45-hour power reserve, bidirectional winding, quite tough as a sports watch movement. Accurate and long-legged, able to measure seconds accurately with the chronometer certification, but also intervals as long as decades. This is a watch that wears surprisingly well. I wouldn't have thought something with lugs integrated like that would wear on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, but it really does, and quite well. I'm probably going to look for this watch in a white metal because rose gold is glam rock. I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm more grunge, which is, you know, white gold or white platinum. So every version of this watch is special, but if you're more Miami, if you're more Riviera, if you're more LA, this is definitely the El Toro Perpetual you want to wear. H. Moser also has its own remarkable perpetual calendar system, and here you're looking at a 50-piece limited edition from 2019. This is the H. Moser & C Pioneer Perpetual Calendar month date, and you could see why it is thusly named. The perpetual system was designed by Andreas Streller, who's famous for cloaking the complexity of complications. Now you can see the watch has a bidirectional settable, large aperture-style date, and I can actually set it in either direction. And it's exactly like the UN in that regard. Very user-friendly and difficult to damage. The watch is a manual wind with a rated 7-day power reserve, though in fact it'll run for almost 9. We have a power reserve indicator over at 9 o'clock. The watch is well loomed, and with its screw-down crown, it is 120 meters water resistant. Now, most of the 50 in this edition were made on straps. This one has a rare upgrade option, the factory bracelet. It is 42.8 millimeters in diameter, but only about 51 millimeters lug to lug, so you can see the bracelet does not project beyond the lugs. I can wear it just fine. If your wrist is my size or larger, game on. It's a very cool piece, and with its lovely fumé burgundy metallic sunburst dial, that smoked color gives it a quintessential Moser character. If you're wondering why Moser doesn't write Swiss made on its dials, they've got a good reason for that. Swiss made means 60% Swiss value or content per watch, and Moser likes to boast that its minimum is 95%, therefore it will not sign its watches with the lower standard. The bracelet does feature a quick adjust system, approximately 1 centimeter of incremental adjustment. You press the Moser logo on the Brogioli made clasp, and you can adjust in and out to fine tune, but you can see every other link is removable. We have a thick gauge steel single swing arm. There's twin trigger release right there, and you can see that the edges of the buckle, if we take a quick look there, they're actually recessed and coined just like the edges of the case. There's a pusher adjuster on the side, and that is to adjust the leap year. Andreas Streller correctly determined that you wouldn't need to see this on a regular basis, so it could be consigned to the case back. We have 2 mainspring barrels, a 3/4 style bridge architecture, although it's split in the center for easy servicing. You can see the barrel arbors are set in golden chaton fixed by screws, another nod to the pocket watch era of Moser watchmaking in the 19th century and early 20th century. They make their balance, their overcoil hairspring, and their 14-karat gold escapement in-house extremely difficult to do for any brand, especially one making 1,500 to 2,000 watches a year. The entire escapement, balance, and hairspring assembly lifts out as a unit so that you can have it quickly replaced by a pre-serviced and adjusted module at any of Moser's regional global service centers for a quicker servicing experience. This watch absolutely kicks ass, but if you want the ultimate Pioneer experience, you want it on the bracelet, and this is the only example of the burgundy month date that I have seen on the bracelet. Okay, things are going to get real here because it's not often that I bring you a final watch that is both two-hand, uncomplicated, I guess it's more than both, that is all of the above. 2 hands, uncomplicated, and solid case back. But this deserves pride of place at the end of the video. Launched in 2021, this is the Patek Philippe Golden Ellipse 5738/51G. It features a dial that is champ-levé and engraved and Grand Faux enamel black and solid gold. So the watch is 40 millimeters from end to end with underslung lugs. It is 34.5 millimeters across and only 7 millimeters thick with a 240 micro rotor, just like the one you saw before inside of the reference 5000. So this is what the movement looks like inside, but the solid caseback adds heft and substance and a thinner profile because solid caseback watches are thinner. But this is part of the rare handcraft series at Patek. You start with a solid gold dial. Then the dial is evacuated with little wells that are filled with black vitreous enamel, and you have a combination of engraving and vitreous enamel. The engraving is laid down at the same time as the little wells, but in excruciating process, the black enamel, the glass-based paint, is laid down in between the engraved sectors. So you have this wonderful hand-chiseled floral pattern, and then the evacuated hollows for the enamel act as little wells or reservoirs into which the black enamel is laid. It's fired at up to 20 times at 800 degrees centigrade to achieve what we have here. The Golden Ellipse series was first launched in 1968, not necessarily because it was made of gold, although it often was, but because it had a golden aspect ratio, and this comes very close to that. Traditionally, they have also featured solid gold dials, which you have here. Enameling, champlevé, grand faux, and engraving, all in one extraordinary watch. Let's see it on my wrist. You can realize that anyone, man, woman, even adult or child, can wear this and wear it easily. And it is super slim, sliding underneath any kind of a cuff. This might be the coolest watch I have seen all year long. If you like that and the others that I displayed today, reach out to me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com, for purchase and pricing details.